First of all, welcome everyone. I already see 9 participants here in the chat. That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Annita, and welcome to this town hall. We hold them regularly, and today we will be talking about innovation and the climate crisis. So I'm Annita. I'm one of the leaders of Atlas Ban Fossil Fuel Subsidies campaign. If you're here, you probably have already heard about Atlas, but we're a global movement uniting people for a free and equitable future. I'm your host today, and I'm very happy to be joined by Assaad Razzouk, also known as the Angry Clean Energy Guy from his famous podcast. Assaad is a Lebanese-British clean energy entrepreneur, podcaster, and commentator based in Singapore, although currently he's based in Seoul, right? Assaad is a high-profile thought leader on climate change and clean energy, and I cannot cite everything that he is or he has been because the list would be too long. But that's very true. But among the many things, he's co-founder and CEO of Green Energy, that is a renewable energy development platform headquartered in Singapore. And he's the host of the Angry Clean Energy Guy podcast. If you've never listened to the podcast, please educate yourself and go right away. But it will be even clearer for you as we go through this call. So, hello, Assaad.
Hi, Anita.
With this experience, I really don't think there's anyone better than you to face today's topic and question, that is, can innovation solve the climate crisis? A couple of things before we dive into the town hall. We're on Zoom, but we're also recording and we're live on Facebook. So to all of you joining, please feel free to ask all your questions. I'll be happy to relay them to Assaad, and I'm pretty sure he's going to do a wonderful job in replying to all of them. And if you're on Zoom, please select the all chat so that everyone can see the questions as well. Good. That being said, we are ready to go. And I would like to start with a very broad question to you, Assaad. And that would be, what would you define as innovation, as it's quite a broad term?
Yeah, Anita, by the way, you're being too kind with the introduction, but I can see from the piece of paper behind you that you're always kind. So that's excellent.
That's true. That's true. It's a mantra, but I'm not being just kind over here. That is the truth.
Look, in terms of innovation, as you say, innovation is very broad, right? But what concerns us is innovation within the context of a climate emergency.
Yeah.
And I have very good news for you. We don't need any innovation. We actually have everything that we need. And frankly, anybody talking about how difficult it all is because we need innovation and we need new technology is looking for an excuse to either keep doing whatever they're doing or to do nothing. And so I agreed to this talk in particular to critique this innovation stuff. You know, we have, and I'll give you a quick tour. You know, we have everything that we need. So if you think about it, we have a critical deforestation problem. We have a critical oceans problem. We have a critical species extinction problem. And we have a superimposed on all this kind of an accelerator, which is climate change, which not only accelerates these three, but also creates all sorts of problems of its own. And so then if you think about, okay, we need to solve this problem because every action counts, and warming by 4 degrees, even though it's an absolute complete planetary disaster, is better than warming by 4.5 degrees, right? So everything that we do matters. If you think about it in this way, and then you arrange the problem in a chewable sizes, you'll see that you don't need any innovation. Deforestation is just a matter of mostly people breaking the law, and the lack of rules and regulations, and the lack of enforcement, right? The oceans and species can be helped if we had if the 30 by 30 initiative, for example, was implemented. So we know exactly what to do. It's to protect 30% of the seas at least, and 30% of the lands, so that no activities take place on them, right? Industrial fishing or what have you. And then when you look at climate, I mean, the Atlas movement is great because it put its finger on the core problem, which is that we're paying $11 million a minute in fossil fuel subsidies to make the problem worse. So talking about innovation in that context is, in my view, people postponing doing anything about the problem. Now, that's not to say there's not many innovations, right? So we can always do solar energy better. We can do wind power better. We can crack the nut on fusion energy, right? Storage could be better. But in many cases, these things would have been better in any case. First, if we have not obfuscated and lied for 40 years about the problem. And then second, if we deployed a lot more, right? Because by definition, deployment brings costs and accelerates progress in solar, wind, and storage, and probably nuclear fusion as well. So as you can see, I don't think I mentioned any big innovations, but there's a reason for that.
Yeah, no, but indeed, it's very curious. So you think that we already have the knowledge and the solutions, but we have a hard time in putting them in place? Is that it?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Think about plastic. What? I mean, we need to innovate to stop. Plastic, as you know, is 99% oil.
Yeah.
So irrespective of its impact on marine life and the fact that we're breathing it, eating it as we speak, right? At the end of the day, it's 99% oil. So you go back to the same problem. Do we need innovation to accelerate our move away from the age of oil? I don't think so, personally. And I'm on the front line of industries that are trying to effect this acceleration.
But but do you think in terms of like I mean, you said that you made the example of plastic, that's a great example, but do you think it's worth it then for R&D, I mean, for companies especially, to invest in trying to green plastic, or should we just go completely another way and invest on completely different solutions?
It's very important to invest in alternatives to plastic.
Yeah.
But once again, if you look at that space in detail, we know what these are. We know what these are. They need scale. And effectively, plastic is squeezing them out because it's essentially sold for free, right? Plastic is made from the waste product of oil and gas.
Yeah.
And so, why is it that supermarkets used to give but still give for free plastic bags in large parts of the world, right? It's because it basically costs nothing. I mean, that's why. So why does it cost nothing? It costs nothing because the producers are not paying for the environmental degradation of their caused by their product. And we have the, once again, we have the alternatives. There's a lot of talented people around the world that are starting businesses literally every day, creating all sorts of alternatives to plastics, to fast fashion, which is also plastic, as you probably know. And the products are there, but the products are being priced out, right? So again, it's an issue of pricing. I mean, let's go back to your fossil fuel subsidies. If you did away with that, you would solve the plastic problem, and you would probably solve the fast fashion problem also. And so once again, that's why I like the Atlas movement, because at least your focus is clear, and it's a huge lever to change the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, but indeed, what's funny in, I mean, when we think about innovation, of course, we know that innovation needs to be financed. That's of course a given. But then, like, but as you are saying, maybe like it's a question of who is financing innovation. Is it companies or is it the state? So in case of corporate R&D investments, in 2019, there were $90 billion spent on innovation alone. But what's funny, as you are actually saying, is that sectors that do not have commercially viable solutions for deep decarbonization, such as, I don't know, cement, for instance, they typically spend relatively little on R&D. And this actually is already, it's very astonishing. I mean, you're one of the most polluting sectors. Why are you not trying to decarbonize? Maybe it's because, as you said, there's no alternative. I mean, there's not really a viable alternative. So if not, completely change the business. And so where are they spend, like, what does it really mean then, corporate R&D spending? Where are they actually spent? Are they spent more in research, or are they more spent in lobbying? Because we come to, if we have the innovative solutions, why are we not putting them in place, as you were saying? Like, where are all the money spent on? Like, especially for corporate spending, but even the state innovation money, where are they spent on then? That's a difficult question, probably.
These are big. These are no. They're big topics, but they have, by and large, the same answer. The cement industry actually is not so bad. If you look at what they're actually doing, and they know how to solve the problem. What you're really talking about is speed and scale, right? Meaning the cement industry put out a credible framework to basically cut the emission intensity of their products by up to 25% this decade, and 100% or even beyond zero by 2050. And if you look at it in detail, it's actually a credible and industry-wide. So there, the question isn't why aren't they investing in R&D, in my view. It's what can we do to get them to move faster and bigger, right? It's not the solution. The steel industry, which is often talked about also as kind of, oh my God, it's too difficult to decarbonize. What are we going to do? We can't do it with oil and gas. The steel industry has a green steel solution. The solution is available. It's actually available today. But what the solution needs is not more R&D. It needs scale, and it needs effectively the removal of the fossil fuel subsidies and other tools that are stopping change, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about earnings and profits in a corporate setting. So you have to change the fundamentals. So I did, I mean, not to bore you with this, but I did a TEDx a few months ago where basically I said that, look, the problem is that another problem is the financial statements of companies don't show their environmental destruction. Because if it did, and if you therefore affected the way people inside them were paid, I can guarantee you they would change much, much faster. And so to me, the question, once again, it's not innovation. Cement has a solution, steel has a solution, even airplanes and ships now have a solution. The question is, how do we get to that solution faster?
Yeah, so this
I'm counting on you. You need to create a global movement to stop fossil fuel subsidies, because that will actually make a huge difference, right?
Yeah, no, indeed. So basically, I mean, just one question, then I see that there are already some other questions popping. But so is it more like, who do we, so in a way, is the current situation more driven by innovation or by lobbying? Because that's a bit, I mean, if this tool that, if the system that is in place is the one that is stopping alternatives, is the main barrier for alternatives to upscale and be mainstreamed, well then, who should we, at Atlas, we identified global leaders as more responsible for that. But are they the only one that we should put our attention on?
You only gave me two choices, right? You said innovation.
Feel free to add
lobbying, right?
Yes, but feel free to add.
Well, look, let's kind of start somewhere else. If you take the women's rights movements, right? It took protests initially to effect something called the Representation of the People Act 1918 in the UK. 1918. Okay. Which is when some women in the UK got the right to vote. I don't want to go too much into the details, but it took literally decades of protests and the First World War to trigger the change in Parliament to actually legislate the right of some women to vote. And in Britain, it took another 10 years for all of the women to get the right to vote. Now, so this didn't just happen, right? And American women had to wait till 1920, French women till 1945, Swiss women till the 1970s, Saudi women till 2015, right? And in every case, change happened after protests. Well, I'm pointing, by the way, to the lobbying side of your question, not the innovation. It wasn't any innovation that did it. Then if you look at the LGBTQ movement, it's the same story. It took enormous protests over a sustained period of time before the Dutch, if I remember correctly, who were the first in the world to legislate same-sex marriage, did so. And that wasn't a long time ago. What was 30 years ago or something like that, right? But in the LGBTQ space, change took 30 years. So it took 30 years for society to accept it as common sense. Women's rights, it took maybe 70 years. I'm talking globally to be accepted as common sense. Yeah. And we have the same challenge with climate, except we don't have 70 years and we don't have 30 years. We have 10 years, right? And it is about partly lobbying and partly roadblocks that are system-wide, right? So the answer is not that you have to change the system. The answer is you have to remove the roadblocks, because we don't have time to change the system, you know. Yeah. So 10 years doesn't give you time to change the system, right? So we need to be very focused in what we're doing, and we need to focus on the biggest levers. Fossil fuel subsidies is one of them. But I'll give you another example of a pretty powerful lever. So the European Commission, a couple of weeks ago, tabled a draft proposal for member states to adopt a law which ultimately would make directors of companies that are not checking whether their products cause deforestation somewhere else. Right? So it makes them liable. That kind of law can affect change at a massive scale on deforestation, right? Yeah. So, you know, so we need to think what are the biggest lever of change, and we then need to focus our resources on them. And importantly, we must not fight amongst ourselves. You know, the climate movement is very broad and it's very deep, but it doesn't always agree with each other. And often it's because it's being distracted by the fossil fuel world. And so you got to be
one against each other.
Yeah, I don't think I said innovation once in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, you didn't indeed. And and I think that you already replied basically to the question, if can innovation solve the climate crisis, or do we actually need a bit of a societal change or a change at other level? And I think that your reply was actually way more pragmatic in terms of, as you said, we don't have the time to drive the whole change because there just isn't time. And so removing the blocks is just a smaller, quote unquote, smaller objective that can be way more reachable. So that's a very good point. I see that there are some questions in the chat, so I'm going to try and relay them to you. So is digitization, from social media, we have this question: is digitization helping in democratizing innovation and making it accessible to an increasing number of people everywhere in the world? Big question.
Look, digitization is great, but it's not that relevant. So I'm focused on the climate fight, right? Digitization is within that space. Digitization is great, provided it leads to more forms of protest movements that can change the world, right? It's not in and of itself a driver of innovation in the space. Now, beyond that, look, digitization, I mean, I'm a fan of digitization, but it's hors sujet as far as this conversation is concerned. Uh, in this conversation, it's highly relevant, but the way I described it, because if you think about it, people like yourselves or Extinction Rebellion or the Divest movement or others can use digitization incredibly effectively to reach into communities and mobilize in ways that they couldn't have 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? So we have to keep our eyes focused on the ball. We need to change the world, and we have about 10 years to do it. What are the biggest levers, and how do we lift these, right?
Yeah. That's good. I also see that there's a question from Francesca. It's quite long, so I'm going to read it. Regarding plastic, it's true that in some cases there are alternatives to plastics, although sometimes they can come with higher CO2 emissions to be produced compared to plastic. And it's true that mono-use plastic needs to be minimized. On the other hand, plastic is an indispensable material for a low-carbon future. For example, to make cars lighter, to increase the shelf life of food products, to make homes more energy efficient. Wouldn't it be worthy to speak about how to make plastic circular so that it doesn't end up in the environment, and to make it mainly from recycled material? It's probably from a chemist, I would say.
No, that's a very good question. And the answer is absolutely yes. But recycling is a major con. Okay? There is no recycling. Recycling has been invented to make people use more plastic while thinking it's been recycled, right? I'll give you the statistics in a minute, but yes, I mean, look, in theory, yes, I think we should have a circular economy, and that would be absolutely beautiful, right? I mean, who would not want a circular economy? In reality, recycling is something pushed by the same people making plastic who aren't recycling anything at all. So what we need laws that force them to pay to get that plastic and get it recycled. At the moment, recycling consists of trying to send US waste in packaging to Kenya so that in Kenya, they effectively do something with it. The Chinese, as you know, were the recycling black hole, taking a lot of plastic from Western economies. And then at one point they raised their hand and they said, sorry, guys, we got to stop this. And then we had a huge recycling problem in Western countries because we don't have the recycling infrastructure. We have not built the recycling infrastructure. It doesn't exist. And I just want to say something about the word plastic. Yes, some plastic is necessary. Okay, so we're not going to get rid of 100% of oil and gas, but we will get rid of 95% of oil and gas. So some plastic is necessary. For example, plastic plays a role in medical equipment, right? So it does have specialized uses where it is superior to any current alternative. But I hate that word plastic because it's manipulative in the extreme, right? It's a very comfortable word because of advertising campaigns over decades. And it definitely needs made from oil. Imagine for a second, if you looked at your sweater, right? And instead of polyester, you saw on it made of plastic derived from crude oil and produced using harmful chemicals, including carcinogens. What would you do? Would you buy that sweater? I mean, no. I don't think so, right? And it's not right that today you have scientific papers, and I'm not making
Mm-hmm.
this up, you can Google it, scientific papers called the human consumption of microplastics. You know, because we're eating it, we're drinking it,
Yeah.
and we are breathing it. So this is like not a small problem. I mean, it's a huge problem. And it needs
Mm-hmm.
to be tackled kind of forcefully and at scale. You know, we don't even have time to build a recycling infrastructure unless we penalize every single petrochemical plant and force them
Mm-hmm.
to pay for their recycling infrastructure. But you know what would happen then? You would have a circular economy because plastic would become so expensive that all the
Mm-hmm.
innovators who already have substitute materials for all of it, and I take Francesca's point, maybe not all of it, but most of it,
Mm-hmm.
will have so much demand for their product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, the problem isn't always what it seems. But I'm not sure if I'll find you the recycling statistics now, but they are alarming.
Yeah, no, the point is, yeah, but do you think then that there's enough, I mean, that the recycling system is all right? I mean, we have the resources, we have the innovation needed, but it's more about the fact that it's discarded. I mean, it's not encouraged by the system
No,
and
no,
by the
no,
fact
no,
that.
no. No, 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 Anita. There is no recycling infrastructure for
Mm-hmm.
plastic at scale anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't exist.
But
You have to build it, and to build it, somebody has to pay for it. And the
mm-hmm.
petrochemical companies should pay for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But good luck, getting there. And at the moment, we've recycled less than 7% of the plastic we have ever produced. I mean, think about that for a second, right? Which means we have not recycled 93% of all the plastic we've produced since we've invented plastic. And that was a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but recycling is a bit of a even bigger issue because it does not only concern plastics. I mean, we've made this example because it's very powerful, but there are things that there are other elements. There are construction materials. There are so many
Yes, but
other things where we.
it's small. It's small.
Mm-hmm.
Take fossil
We've.
fuel subsidies away, and you will take 90% of plastic out. Simple, right?
That's what we're. Yes.
So we gotta stay.
So simple.
That's my point, Anita. We gotta stay focused. If you
Mm-hmm.
have thousands of people that are running around fighting for recycling infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
I hope they have time to fight for cutting fossil fuel subsidies at the same time. But I don't think so because people have to work, they have to eat, they have to sleep. They have their daily lives that interfere with the cause of climate, which
Mm-hmm.
is intangible, and it's not easy to wake up in the morning and think about how am I going to save the world today from climate change. So the lack of focus is very dangerous in my view, because we need to channel our resources into these big levers of change. And my only point is that recycling is just not one of them because it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. In a very pragmatic way. Yeah, no, but I agree with the fact that it's a mounting challenge, and it's a bit. We need to find very focused levers, as you said.
And you found one. And you found
yes.
one.
Yes, indeed. And I mean, I see that Zoe already put it in the chat, but yes, we at Atlas have identified fossil fuel subsidies as the main lever, and that's why we're targeting COP26 leaders and governments to ban fossil fuel subsidies, because that is the main thing that's hampering our to stop our addiction to fossil fuels. And I see there's also another couple of questions. One is from Naji, and it's how do we find renewable energy and carbon capture and other ESG projects to invest in?
That's a very, very big question. So carbon capture, okay, let's start with carbon capture. Okay, carbon capture doesn't work, and it's an excuse to prolong the production of oil, gas, and coal, right? Because if you think about it, by definition, fossil fuels plus carbon capture are more expensive than fossil fuels, right? Because you have to pay for carbon capture. And fossil fuels are already more expensive than renewable energy. So somebody talks about carbon capture, you have to be very suspicious, and honestly, I wouldn't invest in it. Now, ESG, we have to be very careful with ESG because ESG products today are not fit for purpose. We need them regulated, as the European Union, the UK, and the US are doing, but it's not yet the case today, and it's going to take probably 2 more years. Once investment products that are labeled ESG are regulated, then you can at least look at them positively. For now, you have to look at them suspiciously. So you've got to do your own due diligence if you want to invest green, and not just kind of buy the label, because the label is deceiving. And then on renewable energy, I mean, I think the easiest way for people to find opportunities is probably exchange-traded funds and similar products. But there's nothing better than to try and do your own thing, really, in that particular business. So it's this is a very difficult question to answer, because there isn't an off-the-shelf answer for it. And generally, as I said, suspicion is the order of the day for both carbon capture and ESG, both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, indeed, it's carbon capture, and still I work in Brussels, and I still don't understand, after a lot of talks about it, what's the point of it, really. It sounds like a big lie. So yeah,
because it is.
That's how I feel as well. Couldn't agree more. And we also have one, but yeah, actually, to connect with this question from Naji, like, often we hear a lot of like the downsides of renewable energies. For instance, the batteries are not circular, or the cobalt mining is done by kids in Africa, and so all the downsides that apparently impair. I mean, they are not so sustainable, and they don't put the renewable energy sources above fossil fuel energy. So how do you, I mean, are these arguments realistic and justified, or like, what's the deal there?
This is about the DNA of an industry. Okay. So the only thing that I would say is that a careful scrutiny, and I have a podcast on that, by the way, maybe 1.5 already. A careful scrutiny would show that the DNA of the oil, gas, and coal industry is about not protecting the environment. by definition, and always, and has led to environmental destruction and a climate destruction for 100 and change years, right? I think careful scrutiny, however, would show that the DNA of the electrification age is actually about doing the right thing. And when you're not doing the right thing, actually continuing to try to do the right thing. And so I'll explain. So a typical solar panel lives for 30 years, right? But it can be recycled 100%. So the industry is catching up with building an infrastructure for a change to recycle the solar panel so that we have a circular economy. And therefore, this is happening, right? Wind turbines now, as of this year, can also be recycled 100%. And the DNA of the industry is ensuring, and by the way, not trashing solar panels and wind turbines is law in the EU, and I think soon law in most 50 states in the US, and soon law elsewhere. But Shell, the oil company, blasting blasting South Africa's wild coast, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world, to explore for more oil and gas using air guns to create seismic waves and destroying marine life, you know, that is not legislated as something that needs to stop. So you have to have balance when you look at these things. Mining is the same. We have been destroying the world for I don't know how many hundreds of years with mining. Because remember, coal is mining. A lot of the gas is mining. Gold is mining. You know, so many things are mining, right? It's not just the cobalt in the electric battery in the battery of an electric car, but even the cobalt in the battery of an electric car is on its way out because we're creating substitutes for that cobalt. Because again, the DNA of the industry does not allow it to continue with the destruction of the age of oil, and the data points are everywhere. You just have to kind of what's the expression? You just have to connect the dots. That's the expression, right? So if you connect the dots, you'll see what I mean. And I documented some of that in, as I said, a podcast, on social media, because I come back to this theme quite often. This is just the latest attack against renewable energy. So at one point, you know, it was birds, right? Like, oh my God, wind turbines kill so many birds. We have to stop that, right? When in fact, I think from memory, cats and buildings kill more birds. And the wind turbine industry is actually doing something. So there are more birds who die just hitting buildings, and cats killed more birds. But again, the wind industry is trying to paint its turbines differently. It's now zoning them in a way that's helpful to bird migration, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But it's the same story, except now it's about, oh my God, mining in the Congo, right? And before it was bird, and before it was intermittency, and before it was cost. And these are manufactured campaigns, which again, you have to look at, you just have to do your research. If you do your research, you'll be satisfied with my answer.
That's a good reply. Rémi said, as in France, we have a high level of fossil fuel subsidies, producers' exploration, but on the other hand, a huge amount of taxes for customers. Are there any solutions to stop this situation? So sort of like it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's another big question. And it's not in my area of specialization because this is about public policy. But hypothetically, if you remove fossil fuel subsidies, you should be able to actually give a tax cut to everybody. Because fossil fuel subsidies are 8% of global GDP. I mean, that's bigger than the annual output of France and Britain combined. You know, it's not like a small number. So if you remove fossil fuel subsidies, I would imagine that you should be able to give French citizens a break on their taxes. The green economy saves money. There's an Oxford paper, which I would recommend reading, which came out about a month ago, I think in October. It's a very powerful paper, and I had a very long Twitter thread about it, 22 or 30 tweets or whatever. And if you read it, what you will see is that, in fact, moving to a global green economy saves us something like 17 trillion. Not costs us, right? So the marginal impact is one of saving. I mean, we've just spent $17 trillion globally on COVID, right? Yeah. Crises are expensive. What you don't want with climate is for it to become a far bigger crisis, as it will if we continue doing what we're doing, and instead move to a green economy, because then not only do you attenuate the crisis, but you also save $17 trillion. I mean, I think it would come in quite handy. So it's a myth that the green economy costs more. It just doesn't. And you'll find that Oxford paper, I mean, just Google Oxford paper, I don't know, something, or Google my name and Oxford, and you'll find it on my Twitter feed. But it's an incredible read. It's an incredible read. It's really good. And actually, it saves us, the green economy saves us 14 to 26 trillion.
That's indeed a lot of money. That could
I'm gonna put it in the chat.
Thank you. Yes.
Here we go. That's your weekend reading.
Yeah. Quite an intense one, but indeed. And one last question, always from Naji, is while there are many references regarding financial ratings of bonds, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, there are no references yet regarding the sustainability aspects of certain investments in energy. Some standards are being put together by various entities, but none seem to have been adopted yet. Do you have any recommendations about various entities to contract with to help our capital be more sustainable in its investments? That's a big question, but indeed.
Yeah, but it's okay. I have a TED talk on that, and I have a podcast on that. It's fine. The answer actually is no. Not yet, because the question, the person who asked the question is absolutely right. There is a soup of ESG standards and sustainability standards, none of which actually come from a regulated place. Now, this is changing. So as I said, the EU's starting to police that space. So you will have actually proper standards. The UK is as well. The Americans are as well. And probably most importantly, so are the accountants. because the accounting industry also needs to define, what that is, right? And that's all coming, I think, this year or next. So for now, my best advice is to look at a credible NGO, off the shelf, so to speak, but use their standard carefully. And I'll give you an example. Have you heard of the Adani coal mine in Australia? So
I haven't.
There's an Indian group which is developing a coal mine in Australia next to a port that they own to export coal into a power plant they own in India, which would then sell it into Bangladesh. So that project, which has been faced by 10 years of environmental activism and a lot of protest, just started exporting coal this month. That coal is trying to make 20% of the planet, because that's the combined population of India, Bangladesh, and Australia, effectively addicted to coal for decades. Now, the most amazing thing about this is that Adani actually has a pretty good ESG rating from a couple of providers. I mean, that just tells you what a crazy world we live in. You just cannot trust the voluntary rating providers, frankly, because either they don't know what they're doing, or if they do, they're doing it badly. I mean, I don't know which one, but they all need to significantly increase the level of scrutiny, tighten their standards. I'll stop there because we're going to run out of time if I go on with my rant.
Yeah, no, but that's of course. I mean, as we basically driven the conversation from less on innovation and more on where do we put our money and where do we put our taxes, and how can we actually save some money if we don't subsidize fossil fuels. I think it's actually also very interesting, as you were saying, to understand how we can invest a bit, because how can we do green investments with the conscience that they are truly green investments, and what do we base ourselves on? That is, I think that is quite a big question. I don't know if you if you have time to reply to it, but indeed, that's if we are focusing just on ourselves as private citizens, how can we direct all our investments towards non-fossil fuel options, or options that are truly green and not just greenwashed?
Okay, very simple. And it's all, you have to innovate, but not with technology. Okay, so innovate, for example. So the world of money is like a pyramid. Okay, so at the top sit pension providers who collect our money. Then they distribute it to asset managers, who then distribute it into banks and capital markets and everybody else, and so do we into the banks, right? If you can change the way pension funds give their mandates, and I have an old TEDx about that, by the way, you can change the world. And so what you have to do is you have to write to your pension providers or asset managers or what have you, in order for them to take climate risk into account when investing. They have to become liable if they don't. So we need innovative legal strategies, and we need innovative forms of protest. That's what we need in terms of innovation, right? Because we need more of both. More protests, I mean, peaceful, of course, but innovative, focused on the big levers. More innovative legal strategies, that would help. because once you change the law, it's finished, right? It's done.
Yeah.
And we need, we need individuals to definitely keep acting, but not diffuse their action across areas that are not hugely kind of leverageable, right? That are not going to change the world.
That's I think you've been quite focused in your answer, and I think that's in turn quite empowering when we can be a bit more focused, and it doesn't look like it's a huge climate crisis that we have no means to counteract. I think I have one last question, but it might take a bit of time. But always Naji asks, have you heard of pyrolysis to turn coal into a clean gas with no carbon emission?
I have, and I have kind of 3 words: forget about it. Because it's not just about burning coal. Coal is something you have to kind of destroy earth to extract. You then have to transport it, and you have to do all sorts of things with it. It's got a whole value chain of emissions, and we don't need it. We don't need coal anymore. Coal did its job in the Industrial Revolution, and now we need to move on, and we will. It's on its way out. And so applying technology solutions to coal is not wise, because it's probably investments that will become stranded very soon, if they're not already, in most cases.
Yeah, no, I think you said it quite clearly. I mean, innovative and especially alternatives to fossil fuels, especially to oil, coal, gas, are there. We have the solutions most of the time, at least technologically speaking. We need to also have a solution to implement the change. So to create a level playing field for the alternatives to fossil fuels, and not only the direct path for fossil fuels to crowd our markets. So thank you so much, Assaad, for your time. This call was very, very interesting, and I found it also empowering in a way, because you also give us power to our own campaign, and you convinced me once again that what we're doing at Atlas goes in the right direction. So that's amazing. And as I mentioned it briefly, even at the beginning, at Atlas, we launched the Ban Fossil Fuel Subsidies campaign. That is quite self-explanatory, but it's directed at COP26 leaders to ban fossil fuel subsidies. And Zoe will also be sharing the campaign on Facebook and Zoom. And we said it, fossil fuels are bad, subsidies are even worse. And among the negative consequences, they also hamper our ability to go past a fossil fuels world. So we've launched this campaign that is a petition tool that you can find on our website. And we're also launching national campaigns so far in Italy, in Australia, in Kenya, in Germany, to use participation tools such as petitions to lobby politicians and to make sure that we ban fossil fuel subsidies, and this turns into law and it's then implemented. So with this said, I really hope you're gonna go and sign our petition. I also hope that you're going to sign up for the Angry Clean Energy Guy podcast. Don't worry, there's a lot of episodes so that you can really have a lot of time to listen to Assaad's insights, which are amazing. And with this, I thank you so much again, Assaad. And I hope to see you all very soon.
Thanks very much.
You.
Pleasure.
Thank
Take care,
you.
Annita.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You too.